So who do you trust in? For Judah, the threats they perceive determine the people they trusted in. They see enemy armies over the horizon, and they trust in their big chariots and their horsemen and their alliances with other nations. They worry about the crops not growing, so they make alliances with idols, fertility gods, who would provide the rain. They're worried about poverty, and so they acquire wealth and even steal from each other to make sure they themselves are looked after. Slowly, over time, their trust moves from God, as it was in the time of David, to these other things. It seems that the people of Judah have gone through a period of peace, so they're thankful for their army, of prosperity, so they're thankful for their trading and for their alliances and for their fertility gods who've clearly come through for them and given them the rains. They ignore the fact that God has given those things and they trust in these things instead. And what happens when that trust seems to be well placed is we become proud. It's easy to become proud of ourselves, isn't it? I got the good grades. I got the good job. I've got lots of money. I've got a position of power and authority and respect. Look at what I've done. We don't look to God, who, after all, is the one who gave us the brains or the aptitude or the capacity for those things. He's given us the opportunity. He's put us in a place and time where our particular gifts and abilities are valued in society. We don't look to God and thank him for those things, just like the people of Judah didn't look to God for the rains and the crops and the trade and the gifts and abilities they had. They looked to themselves and to their false gods. And what happens is that trust, when it seems to have been placed in the right things, becomes pride. We become proud of ourselves. Look what I've achieved. That desire to rise up above others, to have power and control, and to be seen to have power and control, is really the subject of our passage this morning in many ways. Judah had raised themselves up, but actually many nations around them had raised themselves up. They'd become proud. They'd ignored God and trusted in themselves and were proud of what they had achieved. Of course, for them to have proper control, they needed more and more and more. And what had gone by the wayside was justice and righteousness and truth. The wealthy had stepped on the poorer to get more for themselves because, of course, we can never have enough control, can we? Or we can never have enough control of the future because we can all imagine terrible things happening in the future. So we take more and more. I think that's what the protests about race have been. The white man had stepped on the black man for hundreds of years, and still that oppression is there institutionally if it isn't there intellectually. That's true in all sorts of dimensions, isn't it? Men had oppressed women for a long time. Still, as a culture, we oppress the unborn. We devalue people with disabilities or people of a certain age, often, as a culture. We're not good at valuing our elders, are we? We are a people who are constitutionally inclined to value ourselves above others and to be proud when we have achieved things. But we're never secure enough, and so we step on the people around us to give ourselves more security. Everybody else must lose in order for me to win. And that's what's going on in verses 12 to 17, really, in our passage, is God is putting his finger on all that is proud and lifted up, all of the things that we have. So our towers, our walls, verse 15, our trading vessels and our crafts, the beautiful things that we acquire to make ourselves feel better, verse 16. The lofty places and the oaks of idols, verse 13. And every high mountain and high hill, everything that is lifted up and proud. God is going to come and squash those things. That is what our passage is warning us. Our pride and our arrogance and our selfishness is what lies behind so much of the way we use other people. We want to feel secure, and we depend on suppressing others to build ourselves up. But it's never enough. It cannot save. We cannot achieve what we want to achieve. And I think, as I mentioned before, that I think is most clear with the NHS at the moment. We love the NHS. We're thankful for doctors and nurses. If you are one of those, you do things that I can't begin to understand, and I'm grateful for you. But you must have felt it this little season we're in. There's no cure for COVID-19, but everyone expects you to be able to solve death. And you know that you can't do that. You know that you can sometimes cure people of illnesses and deal with broken bones. But sometimes people are just going to die. We can't control it. And yet I think as a society, we've almost made a god of the NHS. That's why the government league tables on NHS Trust is about how many people don't die, as if the NHS can be responsible for solving death. See, the things that we acquire to give us control, the things we trust in to give us control, can never solve the biggest problem we face, and a great many other problems that we face that are derivative of that. We cannot solve the problem of death. And because we rely on the wrong things, we are idolaters. We turn our back on God. We worship things that are no God at all. And we raise ourselves up in pride, even though we have not solved the problem of death. And our passage this morning tells us that God hates our pride. God hates our arrogance. He hates the way we treat each other when we raise ourselves up above other people. He says, the Lord Almighty has a day in store for all that is lofty and proud. Verse 12. He is going to visit us with his wrath, and we need to be ready for that. And we're going to sing again, and then we're going to come and look at what happens on the day that God comes and what we can do about it now. But let's sing first, shall we?